What if a single decision on the battlefield had rewritten the story of human civilization? What if the empires and cultures we know so well had been replaced by entirely different powers, altering the very fabric of the modern world? History is often shaped by fragile moments, split-second choices, and unexpected outcomes. Across the ages, some of the most pivotal battles decided the fate of nations, religions, and even the course of human progress itself. But let us imagine for a moment, what if the outcomes of those battles had been reversed? Would democracy have flourished? Would certain empires have never risen to power? In today's journey through time, we will explore 20 ancient wars and uncover the intriguing alternate histories that could have emerged. From the narrow pass of Thermopylae to the windswept shores of Hastings, these battles were turning points that not only shaped their own eras but the centuries that followed. Get ready to dive into a world of what-ifs as we unravel how different the world might have been if history had taken a very different path. Stay with us until the end, and you may find yourself questioning just how much of today's world was the result of chance and how much was the weight of destiny. Ready to step into the shoes of history's greatest leaders? Let's begin. Now turning to the Battle of Marathon, this clash in 490 years before the Common Era was more than just a fight between Athens and the Persian Empire. It was a defining moment for Western civilization. Picture this: a massive Persian army, confident in its mission to crush the fledgling city-state of Athens, stands poised on the plains of Marathon. Facing them is a smaller, untested force of Athenian soldiers, determined not just to defend their homeland but to fight for the ideals they held dear: freedom and self-governance. Against all odds, the Athenians achieved a stunning victory, repelling the Persian forces and securing the survival of their city and its revolutionary ideas. This triumph became the foundation for the development of democracy, art, philosophy, and science that shaped the course of Western culture for centuries to come. But what if the outcome had been different? Imagine if Persia had emerged victorious on that fateful day. Greek city-states, including Athens, could have fallen under Persian rule, their distinct culture subdued or even erased by the empire's dominance. Without the Greek ideals of democracy taking root, the very concept of a government by the people might never have flourished. Would the Renaissance, with its revival of classical knowledge, have even occurred? Would the modern world value freedom and individual rights in the same way? A Persian victory at Marathon could have set the stage for an entirely different trajectory of human history, where the Eastern Empire's centralized power model replaced the democratic experiments of Athens. This single battle, fought on a distant plain, carried the weight of civilizations yet to rise. With that, we move forward to another iconic moment in history, one where a narrow pass and an unyielding stand against overwhelming odds left an indelible mark on the world's imagination. As the next challenge unfolds, we arrive at the legendary Battle of Thermopylae, fought in 480 years before the Common Era. This is the tale of 300 Spartans, joined by a few thousand Greek allies, making a heroic stand against an overwhelming Persian army led by King Xerxes. The narrow pass of Thermopylae became the stage for one of history's most celebrated acts of courage and sacrifice. Though vastly outnumbered, the Greek forces managed to hold the pass for days, inflicting significant losses on the Persians and showcasing the resilience and discipline of their warrior culture. While the battle ultimately ended in defeat for the Greeks, it ignited a sense of unity among the Greek city-states, inspiring them to continue the fight and eventually triumph over the Persian invasion. The bravery of the Spartans has since echoed through history, symbolizing the power of resistance against insurmountable odds. But what if the story had taken a different turn? Imagine if the Persian forces had not met such staunch resistance at Thermopylae. Without the time it bought for the Greeks to regroup and prepare, Xerxes could have swiftly advanced into the heart of Greece, capturing Athens and asserting Persian dominance over the region. In this alternate timeline, Greek culture as we know it, the philosophy of Socrates and Plato, the art of the Parthenon, and the political experiments in democracy might never have thrived. Instead, the centralized and authoritarian systems of the Persian Empire could have taken root across the Mediterranean, altering the very foundations of Western civilization. Would the ideals of individual liberty and civic participation that define much of the modern world have ever emerged? Thermopylae's legacy reminds us that even in apparent defeat, a determined stand can shift the tides of history. As we leave this mountain pass behind, we turn to a longer and more complex conflict that brought devastation to Greece, but also held the seeds of incredible possibilities. As the next chapter of history unfolds, we delve into the protracted and bitter Peloponnesian War, which raged for 27 years between Athens and Sparta. This was no ordinary conflict. It was a clash of ideologies, with Athens championing democracy and naval supremacy, while Sparta stood as the symbol of oligarchy and military discipline. The war marked the peak of Greek internecine strife, leaving a trail of destruction, famine, and political instability across the region. Ultimately, Sparta emerged victorious with the help of Persian funding, leading to the fall of Athens and the end of its golden age. But what if the balance of power had shifted and Athens had emerged triumphant instead? Picture a world where Athens, with its cultural brilliance and innovative democratic ideals, had not suffered defeat. Could an Athenian victory have strengthened their democratic institutions, allowing the city to become not just a regional power but the cradle of a long-lasting and expansive cultural empire? Imagine a Greece less fractured by rivalry, united under Athenian leadership, spreading its influence not just across the Aegean but throughout the Mediterranean world. In this alternate path, the cultural and political advancements of classical Athens, its philosophy, drama, and art might have flourished without interruption, shaping a world even more deeply rooted in democratic principles. However, it is worth considering whether such dominance might have led to an Athenian hegemony that stifled diversity among the Greek city-states, potentially replacing collaboration with control. The Peloponnesian War teaches us not only about the consequences of prolonged conflict, but also about how fragile the balance of progress and power can be. As we leave this turbulent time behind, we step into the extraordinary military campaigns of one of history's greatest conquerors, whose ambitions reshaped borders and bridged civilizations. With the next phase of the journey in sight, we turn to Alexander the Great, a figure whose name has become synonymous with ambition, strategy, and the blending of civilizations. Leading the Macedonian Empire, Alexander's campaigns stretched from Greece to Egypt and deep into Asia, forging one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. His victory at the Battle of Gaugamela in particular stands out as a defining moment, cementing his reputation as an unstoppable force and signaling the fall of the Persian Empire. But what if history had taken a different turn and Alexander had faced a crushing defeat at Gaugamela? Imagine a world where the Persian king Darius III had managed to rally his forces effectively and halt Alexander's unrelenting advance. Would the Macedonian dream of unification and expansion have crumbled, leaving Greece fractured and isolated? In such a scenario, the fusion of Eastern and Western traditions, so central to the Hellenistic legacy, might never have occurred. The scientific, artistic, and philosophical advancements that flourished under Hellenistic influence could have been delayed or even lost to time. On the other hand, a resurgent Persian Empire might have reasserted its dominance, potentially altering the cultural and political landscape of the ancient world in ways we can only begin to fathom. Could this alternate path have seen the East shaping the West more directly, reversing the historical narrative we know? Alexander's conquests were not just about territory but ideas. His vision of a world interconnected by shared knowledge and culture remains one of his enduring legacies. As we leave the battlefield of Gaugamela, we march onward to the next great struggle, one that would test the might of two rising Mediterranean powers in an epic clash for dominance. Now turning to the First Punic War, a conflict that marked the beginning of an intense rivalry between Rome and Carthage, we find ourselves in the heart of a struggle that would shape the fate of the Mediterranean. Spanning nearly 23 years, this grueling war saw both powers vying for control over Sicily, a strategically invaluable island for trade and influence. Rome's eventual triumph, marked by its innovative naval strategies and relentless determination, not only secured its foothold in the Mediterranean but also set the stage for its rise as a dominant empire. But what if Carthage had emerged victorious instead? Imagine a scenario where Carthaginian leadership, perhaps under a more unified and aggressive strategy, had decisively defeated Rome early on. Such an outcome could have drastically altered the balance of power. Without Rome's ascendancy, its later expansion into the Western Mediterranean might never have occurred. The cultural and political legacy of the Roman Empire, which profoundly shaped Europe and the Western world, might have been stifled in its infancy. Instead, Carthage, with its vast trading networks and naval superiority, could have dominated the Mediterranean, fostering a world centered around commerce and maritime influence rather than the military and territorial ambitions Rome became famous for. Could we have seen a Carthaginian golden age where Phoenician culture spread its influence far and wide, leaving a markedly different imprint on history? This alternate trajectory raises fascinating questions about how the absence of Roman dominance might have reshaped governance, architecture, religion, and the very fabric of what we now consider Western civilization. With Carthage victorious, the Mediterranean might have become a vastly different crossroads of cultures. As this hypothetical unfolds, we now set our sights on the Second Punic War, where a young Carthaginian commander would rise to challenge Rome in ways the ancient world had never seen before. As the next challenge unfolds, we step into the gripping narrative of the Second Punic War, a confrontation that brought Rome face to face with one of the most brilliant military strategists in history, Hannibal of Carthage. This war is most vividly remembered for Hannibal's audacious crossing of the Alps, a feat that stunned the ancient world and showcased his unparalleled tactical ingenuity. With his diverse army, including war elephants, Hannibal struck deep into the heart of Roman territory, delivering crushing defeats such as the Battle of Cannae. Yet, despite his early victories and ability to destabilize Rome, he could not secure an ultimate triumph. But what if Hannibal had succeeded in his campaign to bring Rome to its knees? Imagine a scenario where Hannibal's early victories snowballed into a decisive conquest of the city itself. Rome's fall would have shattered its burgeoning ambitions, leaving Carthage as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. Under a victorious Carthaginian rule, the Mediterranean could have transitioned into a hub of maritime trade and cultural exchange, emphasizing commerce and economic alliances over military conquests. The Roman ideals of law, governance, and centralized authority might never have evolved into the foundational pillars of Western civilization. Instead, a Carthaginian influence deeply rooted in its Phoenician heritage might have shaped a world more attuned to trade networks, decentralized governance, and perhaps even a different trajectory for religion and cultural integration. Could Europe have grown under a patchwork of loosely allied trading states instead of the powerful centralized empires that followed Rome's legacy? Such a transformation challenges us to rethink everything from the spread of languages to the development of infrastructure and ideologies. With Carthage in control, the ripples of this alternate history could have extended far beyond the Mediterranean, reshaping the foundations of Europe itself. Now shifting our focus, we move to the climactic confrontation of this war, the Battle of Zama, where the fates of these two great powers were irrevocably sealed. Now turning to the decisive turning point of the Second Punic War, we arrive at the Battle of Zama. This confrontation in what is now modern-day Tunisia marked the final showdown between two titans of ancient warfare, Hannibal of Carthage and Scipio Africanus of Rome. By this time, Hannibal's once dominant position had weakened and Rome had turned the tide of the war. Scipio, having studied Hannibal's strategies, boldly brought the fight to Carthaginian soil, forcing Hannibal into a defensive stance. The battle itself was a masterclass in tactics. Hannibal, renowned for his ability to outmaneuver his opponents, relied heavily on his war elephants and a complex formation designed to break Roman lines. Scipio, however, anticipated this and devised a counter-strategy, creating corridors in his ranks to neutralize the charging elephants. This tactical ingenuity, combined with the superior discipline of the Roman legions and their cavalry advantage, ultimately led to a resounding Roman victory. The aftermath of the Battle of Zama was monumental. Carthage was stripped of its military power and forced into harsh terms of surrender, cementing Rome's dominance over the Western Mediterranean and opening the door for its rise as an empire. But what if the outcome had been different? Imagine a scenario where Hannibal emerged victorious at Zama, securing Carthage's position as the prevailing power in the ancient world. A Carthaginian victory could have reversed the trajectory of Roman expansion, halting the unification of the Mediterranean under Roman law, culture, and engineering. Instead, Carthage might have established a decentralized maritime empire, prioritizing trade routes and economic ties over military conquest. Without Rome's unifying influence, the Mediterranean basin could have remained fragmented, a collection of independent city-states and trading hubs, each with its own distinct identity. The ripple effects of such an alternate history would be profound. The enduring legacy of Roman governance, infrastructure, and the eventual spread of Christianity might never have taken root. Instead, a Carthaginian world might have fostered advancements in commerce, navigation, and cross-cultural exchange, reshaping the foundation of what we now know as Western civilization. As we explore these alternate possibilities, it becomes clear just how pivotal this battle was in shaping world history. With the Battle of Zama bringing an end to the Second Punic War, we now pivot to another moment of deep societal upheaval, the Servile Wars, where enslaved peoples rose in defiance of the Roman Republic. As the next challenge unfolds, we arrive at the Servile Wars, a series of desperate and courageous uprisings by enslaved peoples against the might of the Roman Republic. Among these, the revolt led by Spartacus stands out as the most iconic and impactful. Spartacus, a former gladiator, emerged as a symbol of defiance, leading a coalition of enslaved individuals, gladiators, and disenfranchised farmers against the well-organized armies of Rome. His revolt, which began in the gladiator schools of Capua, quickly swelled into a large-scale rebellion that shook the foundations of Roman society. For nearly 2 years, Spartacus and his followers defied the odds, defeating multiple Roman legions and wreaking havoc across the Italian peninsula. At its height, his army of tens of thousands was not merely a force of rebellion but a statement against the oppressive institution of slavery that underpinned Roman wealth and power. However, imagine for a moment that Spartacus had not been defeated. What if his rebellion had succeeded in toppling the Roman Republic or carving out a lasting territory where enslaved peoples could live freely? Such a turn of events would have sent shockwaves through the ancient world. The Roman economy, heavily reliant on the labor of enslaved individuals for agriculture, construction, and industry, might have collapsed under the weight of this upheaval. A defeat of Rome at the hands of Spartacus could have inspired similar revolts across the Republic, unraveling its territorial grip and destabilizing its political dominance. Furthermore, a society led by former enslaved individuals might have fostered entirely new social and economic structures, emphasizing equality and community over hierarchy and exploitation. This alternate trajectory could have delayed or even prevented Rome's eventual transformation into an empire, altering the course of European and Mediterranean history altogether. Such a society might have posed intriguing questions about the nature of freedom, governance, and human rights far earlier than these ideas emerged in our own timeline. Yet, despite their resilience and initial victories, the harsh reality of Rome's military strength ultimately overwhelmed Spartacus and his forces at the Battle of the Scylla River. The rebellion's failure resulted in brutal reprisals, with thousands of his followers crucified along the Appian Way as a grim warning to others. The legacy of Spartacus, however, endures as a lasting reminder of the fight against oppression and the unyielding human desire for freedom. From one era of resistance to another, we now shift our focus to the campaigns of Julius Caesar during the Gallic Wars, a series of conflicts that not only defined Caesar's rise to power but also reshaped the Roman Republic's destiny. Moving forward, we delve into the Gallic Wars, a pivotal series of campaigns led by Julius Caesar that spanned 8 years and forever altered the course of Roman history. These conflicts saw Caesar facing off against the fiercely independent Gallic tribes in what is now modern-day France, Belgium, and parts of Germany. This period not only showcased Caesar's unrivaled military genius, but also set the stage for his eventual dominance in Roman politics. Through a combination of strategic brilliance and relentless ambition, Caesar successfully subdued the diverse and often fractious Gallic tribes, claiming vast territories for the Roman Republic and amassing enormous wealth and power for himself. His triumphs in Gaul solidified his reputation as one of history's greatest military leaders while fundamentally reshaping the Roman Republic, propelling it toward becoming an empire. But what if the story had a different ending? Imagine a scenario where the Gallic tribes managed to set aside their internal divisions and unite under a single leader, presenting Caesar with a formidable and cohesive adversary. In such a case, the Gallic coalition could have leveraged their intimate knowledge of the rugged terrain and guerrilla tactics to thwart Caesar's legions. A unified Gallic victory could have halted Roman expansion into Western Europe, preserving the independence and development of Gallic cultures. The ripple effects of such a defeat would have reached far beyond the battlefield. Without the wealth and prestige gained from his triumphs in Gaul, Caesar's political ambitions might have faltered, preventing him from accumulating the power needed to challenge the Roman Senate and ultimately declare himself dictator. The absence of Caesar's dictatorship could have delayed or even altered the transformation of Rome from a republic into an empire, potentially preserving its republican institutions longer or fostering a wholly different political evolution. Furthermore, the Gallic tribes, unshackled from Roman rule, might have developed their own systems of governance and alliances, potentially becoming a significant counterbalance to Roman hegemony in Europe. The preservation of their culture and autonomy might have led to an alternate trajectory for European history, one rich with diverse influences rather than dominated by Roman institutions, language, and customs. Yet history unfolded differently. Despite fierce resistance, including the legendary stand of Vercingetorix at the Siege of Alesia, the Gallic tribes ultimately succumbed to Caesar's relentless campaigns. The Gallic Wars concluded with a resounding Roman victory, marking a turning point in Caesar's rise to power and paving the way for the eventual birth of the Roman Empire. As we leave behind the battlefields of Gaul, our journey now brings us to another defining moment of Roman history, the Battle of Actium, a naval clash that would seal the fate of the Republic and herald the beginning of the Roman Empire under Augustus. As the next challenge unfolds, we arrive at the waters of the Ionian Sea, where the decisive Battle of Actium took place. This momentous naval clash, fought in the year 31 before the Common Era, pitted Octavian, the future Augustus, against the combined forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. The stakes could not have been higher, with the very fate of the Roman Republic hanging in the balance. Octavian's victory in this confrontation marked the end of the decades-long civil wars that had plagued Rome, bringing about a new political era with the establishment of the Roman Empire under his rule. But what if this fateful battle had ended differently? Imagine a scenario where the alliance of Mark Antony and Cleopatra triumphed over Octavian's fleet. Such a victory would have dramatically altered the course of history. The consolidation of power by Antony and Cleopatra might have established a new political order in which Rome's governance was closely tied to the wealth and cultural influence of Egypt. Together, they could have forged a dynasty blending Roman and Egyptian traditions, possibly creating a more Eastern-oriented leadership for Rome. A sustained victory for Antony and Cleopatra might have pushed the center of power eastward, perhaps even relocating the heart of the empire to Alexandria. This could have transformed not only the cultural but also the economic trajectory of the Mediterranean world, fostering stronger ties between Rome and the ancient civilizations of the Near East. Moreover, Octavian's defeat would have likely prevented his eventual transformation into Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Without his autocratic reforms, the Roman Republic might have lingered, possibly splintered into competing factions instead of coalescing into a unified empire. This alternate path could have led to a weaker Roman state, more vulnerable to external pressures and internal discord. Cleopatra's success in maintaining Egypt's independence and influence could have advanced the legacy of the Ptolemaic dynasty, preserving a degree of autonomy for the ancient kingdom while reshaping its interactions with Rome. However, history instead remembers Octavian's shrewd strategy and naval superiority, which secured his domination and marked the end of the Republic. With the defeat and eventual deaths of Antony and Cleopatra, the Roman Empire was born, ushering in an era that would leave an indelible mark on the foundations of Western civilization. Now, with the ripples of Actium still fresh in our minds, let us journey further into history and explore the Jewish-Roman Wars, a series of revolts that tested the might and resolve of the empire. Now turning to the tumultuous era of the Jewish-Roman Wars, we encounter a series of ferocious revolts that spanned over nearly 70 years. These conflicts, beginning in the year 66 of the Common Era and culminating in 135, were a profound test of both Jewish resilience and Roman hegemony. The first revolt erupted in Judea during a period of rising tensions fueled by oppressive taxation and religious restrictions imposed by the Roman authorities. The Jewish rebels, despite being outmatched in resources, managed to achieve significant victories early on, even taking control of Jerusalem and the formidable Temple Mount. However, the retaliatory response from Rome was swift and devastating. Under the command of Vespasian and later his son Titus, Roman legions crushed the rebellion, sacked Jerusalem, and destroyed the Second Temple in the year 70, an event that would leave an indelible scar on Jewish history. But imagine for a moment that the Jewish resistance had withstood Roman domination and secured their autonomy. A successful defense of Jerusalem against Rome's siege could have drastically altered the political and cultural trajectory of the region. For one, the establishment of an independent Jewish state might have fostered a stronger sense of unity and identity within the Jewish people, preserving their cultural and religious practices without foreign interference. This sovereignty could have created a more stable and prosperous Judea, becoming a thriving center of trade and scholarship in the Eastern Mediterranean. Equally fascinating are the potential ripple effects on the Roman Empire. A failed campaign in Judea might have sent shockwaves through Rome's reputation as an invincible force, emboldening other provinces to rise up against their rule. This could have led to a weakening of Rome's grip on its far-reaching territories, accelerating internal divisions and diminishing its imperial dominance. Furthermore, the preservation of the Second Temple and the cultural heart of Jerusalem could have profoundly impacted the evolution of Judaism and its role in shaping the religious landscape of the ancient world. The later revolts, such as the Bar Kokhba rebellion, might never have happened, sparing the region from further devastation and population displacement. This alternate scenario might have also influenced the spread of Christianity, which developed and expanded significantly in the context of Roman rule over Judea. Without the same level of Roman suppression, the cultural and religious dynamics between Judaism and early Christianity could have taken a markedly different path, potentially altering the development of Western religious traditions as we know them today. Yet, in the actual historical timeline, the end of these revolts cemented Roman supremacy and led to the widespread diaspora of the Jewish people. The destruction of the Second Temple remains a pivotal moment in Jewish history, symbolizing both loss and resilience. As we move on from the embattled hills of Judea, let us delve into the dense forests of Germania, where the Roman legions faced one of their most humiliating defeats in the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. Now turning to the dense and shadowy forests of Germania, we arrive at the fateful Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in the 9th year of the Common Era, where 3 entire Roman legions were annihilated by an alliance of Germanic tribes led by Arminius, a chieftain with a deep understanding of Roman tactics. This crushing defeat not only halted Rome's expansion into Germania, but also became one of the most significant turning points in the empire's history. The ambush was so devastating that Rome abandoned its ambitious plans to fully subjugate the Germanic territories east of the Rhine River, creating a natural boundary that would persist for centuries. But let us imagine for a moment that the outcome had been reversed, and the Roman legions, under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus, had somehow outmaneuvered Arminius's forces and secured victory. Such a triumph would have given Rome the momentum to push deeper into Germania, establishing permanent settlements and integrating the region more closely into the empire. This could have facilitated the spread of Roman infrastructure, law, and culture throughout the Germanic lands, potentially accelerating the Romanization of Northern Europe. Roads, aqueducts, and fortified cities could have transformed the rugged landscapes of Germania into thriving centers of commerce and governance. The integration of Germania might have also strengthened Rome militarily and economically. By recruiting Germanic warriors into the Roman army, as was done with other conquered peoples, Rome could have bolstered its forces with fierce and capable soldiers. Economically, the fertile lands and abundant natural resources of Germania could have enriched the empire, providing a steady flow of timber, metals, and agricultural produce. Culturally, the blending of Roman and Germanic traditions might have produced a unique hybrid civilization, fostering new developments in art, language, and governance. The greater cohesion within the empire could have delayed or even prevented the fractures that ultimately led to its decline. Furthermore, a Roman-controlled Germania might have altered the power dynamics of medieval Europe, influencing the formation of modern European states and reshaping the trajectory of Western history. However, in reality, Arminius's victory ensured that Germania would remain fiercely independent, with its tribes resisting Roman domination for centuries to come. This outcome not only marked a decisive end to Roman expansion in the north, but also highlighted the limits of the empire's reach. As we leave the somber shadows of the Teutoburg Forest behind, let us journey eastward to the ancient Indian subcontinent, where the brutal Kalinga War would change the course of not only a kingdom but also the personal convictions of an emperor. Now turning to the ancient Indian subcontinent, we encounter the Kalinga War, a devastating conflict fought in the 3rd century before the Common Era under the command of Emperor Ashoka of the Maurya Empire. This war, initiated as part of Ashoka's campaign to expand his already vast empire, became infamous for the staggering loss of life and widespread destruction it inflicted on the people of Kalinga. Historical records suggest that hundreds of thousands perished during the conflict, including warriors and civilians alike, leaving behind a landscape marked by unimaginable suffering. Yet, beyond the battlefield, the Kalinga War would forever etch its mark on history for the profound transformation it sparked in Ashoka himself. Overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the devastation, Ashoka experienced a deep personal reckoning, leading him to renounce violence and adopt the principles of Buddhism. His subsequent efforts to promote peace, compassion, and nonviolence across his empire would influence the cultural and spiritual fabric of India for generations to come. But what if the outcome of this brutal conflict had been reversed? Let us imagine a scenario where Kalinga, against immense odds, had successfully resisted Ashoka's forces and secured its independence. Such a victory could have drastically altered the trajectory of the Maurya Empire. A failed campaign in Kalinga might have weakened Ashoka's authority and destabilized his empire, potentially leading to internal uprisings or external invasions. The political and military resources expended in the campaign could have debilitated the Mauryan state, accelerating its decline and fragmenting its vast territories into smaller, independent kingdoms. Culturally, a victorious Kalinga might have emerged as a powerful regional force, fostering its own unique traditions and developments. Its resistance to Mauryan domination could have inspired other states to assert their autonomy, reshaping the political landscape of ancient India by encouraging a more fragmented and decentralized system of governance. Furthermore, without the transformative impact of the Kalinga War, Ashoka may never have embraced Buddhism, leaving it spread across the Indian subcontinent and beyond to unfold at a slower pace or even rely on entirely different champions. The profound cultural and spiritual legacy tied to Ashoka's reign, including the establishment of Buddhist monuments and the dissemination of Buddhist teachings, might have taken vastly different forms or been significantly diminished. In this alternate timeline, Kalinga's resilience would symbolize not just the defiance of one kingdom, but a broader resistance to imperial consolidation and control. The ripple effects of such an outcome might have extended far beyond the borders of ancient India, influencing trade networks, cultural exchanges, and even the philosophical currents that shaped the ancient world. However, in the history we know, Kalinga's defeat marked a turning point for Ashoka, one where conquest gave way to compassion, and ambition was tempered by a deep commitment to nonviolence. As we reflect on the transformative legacy of the Kalinga War, let us turn our attention to the chaotic and war-torn landscape of ancient China, where the Three Kingdoms period ushered in one of the most turbulent eras in Chinese history. As the next challenge unfolds, we delve into the tumultuous era of the Three Kingdoms period in ancient China, a time marked by relentless civil wars and a fierce struggle for dominance among rival warlords. This period, spanning nearly a century, began with the collapse of the Han dynasty and saw the land divided into three competing states, Wei, Shu, and Wu. The ensuing conflict was not only a military contest but also a battle of strategy, diplomacy, and ambition, leaving an indelible mark on Chinese history and culture. Key figures like Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan emerged as iconic leaders, each vying to unify China under their rule. Ultimately, it was the state of Wei that gained the upper hand, paving the way for the eventual reunification of China under the Jin dynasty. But what if a different warlord had triumphed during this chaotic chapter of history? Imagine if Liu Bei, revered for his ideals of benevolence and loyalty, had succeeded in establishing Shu as the dominant force. Such a shift might have ushered in a governance model rooted in Confucian values, potentially fostering a more inclusive and ethical administration. Alternatively, if Sun Quan had prevailed, Wu's emphasis on naval power and control of the southern regions might have shifted the geopolitical focus of China toward maritime trade and expansion along the coastlines, possibly accelerating interactions with other cultures and civilizations. A victory for Liu Bei or Sun Quan could have profoundly altered the trajectory of Chinese unification, impacting not only the political structure but also the cultural and economic development of the region. The centralized power that eventually emerged under the Jin dynasty might have given way to a more decentralized system, where regional diversity and autonomy played a more significant role. Furthermore, the intricate strategies and alliances forged during this period might have inspired alternate schools of thought or innovations in governance, influencing future dynasties in unexpected ways. Culturally, the Three Kingdoms period gave rise to some of China's most celebrated literature and folklore, including the iconic Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a legendary tale that continues to captivate audiences worldwide. A different victor might have shaped these stories, attributing heroism and virtue to other figures and altering the narratives that resonate through Chinese culture to this day. In this alternate timeline, the unification of China might have been delayed or reshaped, with lasting consequences for its position in East Asia and the world. Yet, in the history we know, this era remains a powerful symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring quest for unity amid fragmentation. With the Three Kingdoms period offering a glimpse into the complexities of ancient China, we now shift our focus to a monumental event in Roman history, the Battle of Adrianople, where the fate of an empire hung in the balance. As the next phase of our journey unfolds, we find ourselves in the late 4th century, a time when the might of the Roman Empire was tested like never before. The Battle of Adrianople marked a turning point where the Roman legions suffered a catastrophic defeat at the hands of the Goths. This battle not only claimed the life of Emperor Valens, but also exposed the vulnerabilities within the Roman military and administrative systems. It was a moment that shook the foundations of an empire already struggling under the weight of internal divisions and external pressures, hastening the decline of the Western Roman Empire. But what if the outcome had been different? Imagine a scenario where Roman forces triumphed on that fateful day. The implications of such a victory could have been profound. A Roman win at Adrianople might have restored confidence in the empire's military might, bolstering its ability to defend against future invasions. This could have delayed the influx of other Germanic tribes into Roman territories, preserving the integrity of its borders for a longer period. With the empire's stability reinforced, resources and energy might have been redirected toward addressing internal issues, such as economic stagnation and political fragmentation, potentially extending the lifespan of the Western Roman Empire. A Roman victory might also have transformed the empire's approach to dealing with migrant groups like the Goths. Instead of the contentious relations that often led to uprisings and rebellions, a more strategic integration of non-Roman peoples could have emerged. By strengthening alliances and incorporating these groups into the Roman system on more favorable terms, the empire might have fostered a more cohesive and diverse society, reducing internal strife and rebellions. Culturally, the preservation of a stronger Western Roman Empire might have significantly influenced the development of medieval Europe. Roman traditions in governance, law, and infrastructure could have been perpetuated more extensively, providing a more unified foundation for the societies that emerged in the post-Roman era. The spread of Christianity, deeply tied to the Roman Empire, might have taken a different trajectory as well, shaping religious and cultural dynamics across Europe in new ways. While the Battle of Adrianople stands as a grim reminder of the empire's vulnerabilities, it also serves as a pivotal moment that shaped the historical landscape of Europe. Had Rome managed to secure victory, the ripple effects could have altered not only the fate of the empire but also the trajectory of Western civilization itself. Moving forward, we now venture to the heart of the Sasanian Empire, where its dramatic fall in 651 reshaped the balance of power in the ancient world. As the next chapter of history unfolds, we find ourselves in the heart of ancient Persia, where the Sasanian Empire stood as a formidable force, rivaling the Eastern Roman Empire in power and grandeur. However, in 651, the empire faced its ultimate challenge with the rise of the Muslim conquests, a series of campaigns that brought about its collapse. The defeat of the Sasanians not only marked the end of a proud dynasty, but also heralded a new political and cultural era in the region, shaping the Islamic world as we know it today. But let us pause and consider what if the Sasanians had successfully repelled the advancing Muslim forces. A Sasanian victory could have rewritten the historical landscape of the Middle East and beyond. By maintaining their dominance, the Sasanians might have preserved Zoroastrianism as a major religious and cultural influence in the region, potentially altering the trajectory of religious development in the area. The empire's political stability could have acted as a buffer, delaying or even restricting the spread of Islam into Persia and neighboring territories. This alternative path might also have affected the balance of power between the major empires of the era. A strong and enduring Sasanian empire could have continued to serve as a counterweight to the Eastern Roman Empire, creating a more prolonged and dynamic contest for influence across the Middle East, Central Asia, and parts of the Indian subcontinent. Such a rivalry might have spurred innovations in administration, science, and culture, as each empire sought to outperform the other in pursuit of supremacy. Economically, the Persian control of key trade routes, including the Silk Road, could have ensured their dominance in regional and global commerce. This might have allowed the empire to cultivate an even more prosperous and interconnected society, fostering greater exchanges of ideas, technologies, and goods between East and West. Moreover, the governance strategies of the Sasanians, which blended centralized authority with local autonomy, could have evolved further. An enduring Sasanian regime might have refined these systems, offering a model of administration that influenced the governance structures of later empires. Culturally, the continuation of Sasanian rule might have helped preserve and expand the empire's contributions to art, architecture, and literature. Their unique styles and traditions, blending Hellenistic and Persian influences, could have left a deeper imprint on the development of global artistic and intellectual heritage. While the fall of the Sasanian Empire marked a turning point that paved the way for the rise of Islamic civilization, imagining a scenario where the empire stood its ground opens up a world of fascinating possibilities. The enduring power of Persia could have shifted the course of history in profound and unexpected ways. With this thought in mind, let us move to the intense and prolonged conflicts of the Arab-Byzantine Wars, where the struggle for dominance between two mighty empires continued to shape the medieval world. As the sun rises on the next chapter, we delve into the enduring struggle of the Arab-Byzantine Wars, a series of epic confrontations that spanned hundreds of years. These battles were born from the rapid expansion of the Arab caliphates in the 7th century and their efforts to unseat the mighty Byzantine Empire, which had long been a cornerstone of Christian power in the Mediterranean. The unfolding conflicts not only reshaped the political and military landscapes of the region, but also deeply influenced the cultural and religious identities of both empires. But what if Byzantium had managed to repel the Arab conquests entirely? In this alternate reality, a victorious Byzantine Empire might have solidified its position as the dominant force in the Eastern Mediterranean, preserving and expanding its hold over key territories that were historically lost to Arab advances. The survival of Byzantine influence in regions such as the Levant, North Africa, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula could have dramatically altered the development of the Islamic world. Without these initial territorial gains, the early caliphates might have faced heightened internal challenges, possibly slowing or even halting their rapid growth. Byzantium's religious authority would also have been vastly reinforced. The preservation of Christian dominance in contested regions might have limited the spread of Islam, leading to a more confined and fragmented growth of the new faith. This scenario could have sparked a different trajectory for interfaith dynamics, with Christianity maintaining a stronger foothold across areas that eventually became Islamic cultural centers. Religious tensions might have evolved differently, possibly influencing the nature of theological debates and exchanges between the two faiths. Culturally, the uninterrupted Byzantine control of these regions could have fostered a greater blending of Greco-Roman traditions with local customs. The continuation of Byzantine art, architecture, and scholarship might have created a more unified Mediterranean cultural sphere, leaving a prolonged and distinct mark on global heritage. The enduring presence of Byzantine governance may have led to administrative systems that further influenced the medieval and early modern world. Economically, a victorious Byzantium would have retained access to critical trade routes connecting the East and West. This control could have strengthened its economic foundations, fostering a thriving empire capable of continuous innovation and wealth accumulation. The famed Silk Road and other trade networks might have evolved under Byzantine oversight, creating a different framework for global commerce and exchange during the medieval period. Militarily, the prolonged success of the Byzantine armies could have spurred advancements in strategy and technology, possibly accelerating innovation in defense and combat throughout Europe and the Near East. This military strength might have empowered the empire to resist future threats more effectively, potentially delaying its eventual decline and collapse. Yet, this alternate history also raises questions about its ripple effects on the Arab world. Without the same territorial and economic footholds, the Islamic caliphates might have evolved into smaller, more fragmented polities. Alternatively, the focus of Arab expansion might have shifted elsewhere, such as further into Central Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, leading to entirely new centers of power and influence. Imagining such an outcome highlights the immense significance of the Arab-Byzantine wars in shaping the trajectory of both empires and the broader world. With Byzantium holding its ground, the balance of power, culture, and religion in the medieval period could have unfolded in dramatically different ways. And now, let us journey further to the decisive moments in European history, as the Battle of Tours becomes the next focal point of our exploration. As the next challenge unfolds, we turn our attention to the pivotal Battle of Tours, a confrontation that has often been described as a turning point in European history. This moment in the early 8th century saw Charles Martel, the Frankish leader known as the Hammer, decisively defeat the advancing forces of the Umayyad Caliphate in what is now central France. The victory not only halted the Umayyad expansion into Western Europe, but also cemented Martel's legacy as a defender of Christendom. However, what if history had taken a different path? Imagine a scenario where the Umayyads emerged victorious, forever altering the cultural and religious landscape of medieval Europe. If the Umayyad Caliphate had triumphed at Tours, their influence in Western Europe would likely have extended far beyond the Iberian Peninsula, their stronghold at the time. A victorious march northward could have enabled the Caliphate to establish a foothold across much of what is now France, possibly even pushing into the heart of modern Germany. Such an expansion would have introduced Islamic governance, culture, and architecture to regions that would later form the core of medieval Christendom. Over time, these areas may have adopted Islamic traditions, creating a vastly different cultural identity for the European continent. Religiously, the effects would have been seismic. The spread of Islam into Western Europe could have reshaped the religious dynamics of the continent, potentially reducing the dominance of Christianity. Cathedrals might have given way to mosques, and Christian theological centers like monasteries could have seen their influence wane under Islamic rule. The Umayyads brought with them a rich tradition of learning, science, and philosophy, which might have melded with existing European practices to create a unique cultural and intellectual synthesis. This blending of traditions could have accelerated the spread of knowledge across Europe, much like the Golden Age of Islam did in its own territories. Politically, an Umayyad victory might have prevented the rise of the Carolingian dynasty, which Martel's descendants would later lead to prominence. Without the consolidation of Frankish power, the political unity that eventually shaped the foundations of modern Europe might have faltered, leaving a fragmented landscape of competing states and caliphate-controlled territories. The absence of a unified Frankish kingdom could also have altered the course of events, like the eventual unification of the Holy Roman Empire, shifting the trajectory of European history entirely. Economically, the expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate into Europe might have brought about an earlier integration of trade networks stretching from the Mediterranean to the North Sea. The Caliphate's extensive commercial systems could have encouraged the development of thriving trade hubs in Western Europe, connecting cities like Paris or Aachen with the riches of North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Such connections might have spurred advancements in commerce and infrastructure far earlier than what Europe experienced during its medieval period. Militarily, the Frankish forces' failure to stop the Umayyads might have paved the way for further Islamic expansions northward, potentially threatening regions beyond the Rhine and even into the British Isles. This hypothetical dominance could have led to prolonged conflict between remaining Christian kingdoms and the expanding caliphate, shaping centuries of European warfare and alliances in ways unimaginable to us today. Yet, even within this alternate reality, critical questions remain. Would the Umayyads have been able to maintain their hold on such a vast and diverse empire, or might internal divisions have fractured their control over Europe? And how would the coexistence of Islamic and Christian powers on the continent have shaped interfaith relations and the eventual evolution of European and Islamic worlds? The Battle of Tours stands as a reminder of how fragile and contingent historical outcomes can be. A single victory or defeat has the potential to alter the course of civilizations. With this in mind, we now shift our focus to another era-defining conflict, as Norse warriors take center stage in the Viking invasions that reshaped the medieval world. Now turning to the fierce and relentless Viking invasions that spanned from the 8th to the 11th century, this era of Norse incursions sent shockwaves through medieval Europe. These seafaring warriors from Scandinavia were not merely raiders but also skilled explorers, traders, and settlers whose influence reached far beyond their homelands. The Vikings left an indelible mark on the societies they encountered, reshaping the political, cultural, and economic landscapes of the time. But what if the Vikings had gone beyond their historical achievements and established lasting control over key territories such as England or France? How might this have changed the trajectory of European history? Imagine a scenario where the Viking conquest of England endured far beyond their famed victories, such as the successful establishment of the Danelaw in the 9th century. Under prolonged Norse rule, England might have developed a unique identity deeply rooted in Scandinavian traditions. Viking legal systems, such as the Thing assemblies, could have replaced Anglo-Saxon governance, fostering a more decentralized and participatory political structure. Norse mythology and cultural practices might have taken greater hold, influencing literature, art, and even religious beliefs. The Christianization of England could have been delayed or taken on a distinctly Norse character, blending Christian and pagan elements in unexpected ways. Similarly, if the Vikings had secured long-term control over territories in modern-day France, such as the region they famously raided and later settled as Normandy, the outcomes could have been profound. The Viking rulers might have expanded their influence beyond coastal settlements, dominating inland territories and integrating Norse customs with Frankish culture. Trade routes connecting Scandinavia with the Mediterranean could have flourished, creating a network that bolstered economic growth and cultural exchange across Europe. This increased connectivity might have accelerated technological advancements and the movement of ideas between the northern and southern parts of the continent. Politically, a Viking-dominated Europe would have looked vastly different. The centralized monarchies that emerged in England and France during the medieval period might have been replaced with looser confederations of Norse-led territories. These regions, driven by maritime trade and Norse ingenuity, could have fostered greater exploration, potentially hastening the colonization of lands beyond Europe. Norse expeditions might have ventured deeper into the Americas long before the voyages of the late 15th century, possibly establishing Viking settlements on a more permanent basis and altering the course of transatlantic history. Religiously, the prolonged presence of Viking rulers in Europe could have created unique spiritual landscapes. The initial pagan beliefs of the Norse might have mingled with Christianity in enduring ways, producing syncretic traditions that reshaped religious practices and institutions. Cathedrals might have coexisted with temples dedicated to Norse gods, creating a rich tapestry of spiritual life across their domains. Such a fusion could have had a ripple effect throughout medieval Europe, influencing neighboring regions and their cultural development. Militarily, the establishment of long-term Viking strongholds in Europe could have led to a succession of conflicts between Norse rulers and emerging Christian kingdoms. The balance of power in Europe might have shifted, with Norse armies playing a dominant role in shaping the alliances and rivalries of the medieval world. This constant state of flux could have delayed the unification of key territories like England and France, and led to a multi-century struggle over control of the continent. However, the ultimate question remains, could the Vikings have sustained their dominance in such a vast and complicated landscape? Internal divisions among Viking leaders, the challenges of ruling diverse populations, and the logistics of maintaining control over distant territories might have tested their ability to retain power. Yet, had they succeeded, the map of medieval Europe might look unrecognizable today, with Norse traditions deeply embedded across the continent. The Viking invasions stand as a testament to the transformative power of exploration and conquest. They remind us that history is not merely the story of those who came, saw, and left, but of those who might have stayed and forever altered the world. As we leave behind the tales of Norse warriors, we now head into one of the most iconic moments of medieval history, the Battle of Hastings, which shaped the destiny of England and beyond. Now turning to the Battle of Hastings in the year 1066, a pivotal moment that forever changed the trajectory of English history. This legendary clash saw William, Duke of Normandy, famously known as William the Conqueror, secure a decisive victory over King Harold Godwinson's Anglo-Saxon forces. This battle marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England and laid the foundation for centuries of Norman influence that would reshape English culture, governance, and even its language. But what if the outcome had been different? What if Harold had triumphed on that fateful day and preserved the Anglo-Saxon reign? A victory for Harold Godwinson could have dramatically altered the landscape of medieval England. Without Norman rule, the introduction of the feudal system as we know it might have been delayed or even entirely reimagined. Instead of the centralized Norman administration, England could have retained its Anglo-Saxon governance structure, which emphasized local councils and a more decentralized approach to power. This would likely have resulted in a slower consolidation of royal authority, potentially leaving England fragmented into smaller regions for a longer period. Culturally, the absence of Norman influence would have profoundly impacted the English language and identity. Modern English, a blend of Anglo-Saxon, Norman French, and Latin, might have evolved along a significantly different path. Without the Norman infusion of French vocabulary, the English language might have remained closer to its Germanic roots, creating a linguistic landscape that feels alien compared to what we speak today. Art, architecture, and literature, which were heavily shaped by Norman styles and sensibilities, might have remained rooted in Anglo-Saxon traditions, resulting in a cultural identity distinct from continental Europe. Internationally, an Anglo-Saxon victory at Hastings would have reshaped European geopolitics. William's ambitions in England were intertwined with his role in Normandy, a crucial part of the French kingdom. Had Harold repelled the Norman invasion, William's focus might have remained on continental Europe, where he could have continued efforts to expand Norman influence. This would have altered the balance of power between England and France, possibly delaying or even preventing the centuries-long rivalry that came to dominate their histories. England, under continued Anglo-Saxon leadership, might have forged stronger ties with Scandinavia rather than becoming heavily involved in European affairs, opening up alternative trade and military alliances. Religiously, the Norman conquest played a significant role in aligning England more closely with the reforms and policies of the Pope in Rome. Without William's victory, the Anglo-Saxon Church, with its more localized practices, might have continued operating independently from the broader European trends. This could have resulted in a church less influenced by Roman Catholic reforms, opening the door to unique religious developments within England. On the battlefield, Harold's victory could have further cemented the role of Anglo-Saxon military strategies and tactics. The famous shield wall, a hallmark of Harold's forces, might have remained a dominant feature of English warfare for generations to come. This could have delayed the introduction of Norman cavalry tactics and the castles that came to define medieval military strategy in England. Ultimately, the stakes of the Battle of Hastings extended far beyond one single day of combat. The Norman victory not only changed the fate of England but also resonated across Europe for centuries to follow. A world in which Harold Godwinson stood victorious would have created an entirely different England, one less influenced by continental Europe and more rooted in its Anglo-Saxon past. But as history tells us, William's triumph was the turning point that set the stage for modern England. As we close this chapter on the Norman conquest, we step back to reflect on the broader tapestry of ancient wars and their far-reaching consequences. From the fields of Hastings to the ancient walls of Marathon, we've explored how alternate outcomes could have reshaped our world in unimaginable ways. As the next phase of the journey unfolds, we revisit the ancient battlefield of Marathon in the year 490 before the Common Era, a critical turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars. This clash, where a vastly outnumbered Athenian army triumphed against the mighty Persian forces, is often heralded as a defining moment for Western civilization. But let us imagine a scenario where the outcome was reversed and Persia emerged victorious on that fateful day. How might the ancient world have been reshaped in the wake of such a monumental shift? A Persian victory at Marathon could have drastically altered the trajectory of Greek civilization. With Athens subdued, Persia might have solidified its foothold in Greece, using it as a strategic base to push further into Europe. The flourishing city-states of Greece, known for their intellectual and cultural contributions, might have been stifled under Persian dominion. The distinctive Greek ideals of democracy, individualism, and philosophy, which heavily influenced Western thought, could have been overshadowed by the imperial policies and centralized governance of the Persian Empire. This alternate reality would likely have had significant geopolitical ramifications. Persia, emboldened by its success in Greece, might have directed its attention toward consolidating control over the European continent. Without the unified resistance of Greece, other European regions might have struggled to mount an effective defense, potentially enabling Persia to extend its empire deep into the heart of Europe. This expansion could have fundamentally altered the balance of power, creating a unified empire that spanned Asia, the Middle East, and large portions of Europe, reshaping the cultural and political dynamics of the ancient world. Culturally, the blending of Greek and Persian traditions might have taken a very different form under Persian dominance. While history shows us that cultural exchange flourished during periods of peaceful interaction, such as in the later Hellenistic era, the imposition of Persian rule in Greece might have suppressed the independent development of Greek art, philosophy, and science. The classical works of figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle might never have emerged, potentially leaving a void in the intellectual heritage of the West. Furthermore, the ripple effects of a Persian victory at Marathon could have extended far beyond Europe. The rise of Rome, often seen as the successor to Greek civilization in shaping Western culture, might have been delayed or significantly altered. With a dominant Persian presence in Europe, Rome might have faced a vastly different set of challenges in its own bid for power. potentially reshaping the timeline of its eventual rise to prominence. Religiously, a victorious Persian empire in Greece would have carried its Zoroastrian beliefs across the region, potentially limiting the spread of Greek polytheism and its eventual influence on Roman and later Christian traditions. The spiritual landscape of Europe could have been far more reflective of Persian religious doctrines, altering the evolution of faith and philosophy on the continent. Militarily, the Athenians' stunning victory at Marathon had inspired Greek confidence and unity, which proved critical in later battles such as the one at Salamis. Without this early triumph, the Greek resistance to further Persian invasions might have faltered, paving the way for a more comprehensive and lasting Persian conquest of the region. This, in turn, could have delayed or eradicated the development of military innovations and strategies that emerged from the Greco-Persian conflicts. The Battle of Marathon exemplifies how even a single day on the battlefield can cast ripples across centuries. A Persian victory might have rewritten the story of not just Greece but the entire Western world. However, history, as it unfolded, granted Athens its moment of triumph, allowing Greek civilization to lay the intellectual and cultural foundations that continue to influence us today. As we leave the verdant plains of Marathon behind, the echoes of possibility draw us toward the next ancient battlefield, where yet another twist in history could have rewritten the course of our shared past. As the next challenge unfolds, we find ourselves at the narrow mountain pass of Thermopylae in 480 before the Common Era, where an alliance of Greek city-states, led by King Leonidas of Sparta, made their legendary last stand against the vast Persian forces of King Xerxes. This battle has been immortalized as a symbol of courage and resilience, but let us consider an alternate outcome where Persia crushed all Greek resistance at Thermopylae without the subsequent naval setback at the Battle of Salamis. How might this have shaped the cultural and intellectual legacy of Greece as we know it? Under Persian domination, the Greek world would likely have experienced a profound transformation. Unlike the eventual independence that allowed Greek city-states to flourish creatively and intellectually, a Persian victory could have imposed a hierarchical structure that stifled the development of Greek philosophy, art, and science. Figures like Socrates, whose ideas were foundational to Western philosophy, might never have emerged in a political and social climate overshadowed by authoritarian rule. Plato's vision of an ideal society and Aristotle's groundbreaking contributions to science and logic could have been lost entirely, depriving humanity of some of its most influential intellectual pillars. In the realm of arts and architecture, the distinct and innovative Greek style might have been overshadowed or merged into Persian imperial designs. While Persian culture was renowned for its sophistication, including its grand palaces and intricate art forms, the unique flair of the Parthenon and other classical masterpieces might never have come to light. Persian rule might have seen the prioritization of works glorifying the empire rather than the celebration of individuality and harmony, hallmarks of Greek creativity. The scientific advancements initiated by the Greeks could have been delayed or altogether suppressed under Persian governance. The free exchange of ideas that thrived within the autonomous Greek city-states was an essential part of their innovation. In a world dominated by Persian centralization, the exploratory spirit of Greek thought might have been subdued, potentially setting back advancements in fields like astronomy, mathematics, and medicine for centuries. However, it is also worth noting that Persian culture was known for its tolerance and the inclusion of diverse traditions within its empire. This raises the possibility that some elements of Greek culture, albeit heavily influenced by Persian norms, could have persisted. Yet, the independence and defiant identity that propelled Greek achievements might have been irreparably diminished, leaving the world with a vastly different intellectual and artistic heritage. The question also extends to the political legacy of Greece. Democracy, first seen in Athens and later evolving as a foundational principle of governance in the Western world, might have been extinguished in its infancy. Persian rulers operating through a centralized monarchy would likely have replaced the experiments of collective governance with a system that reinforced imperial authority. The Greek ideals of citizenship and civic responsibility, which revolutionized thoughts on governance, might never have spread beyond the Aegean. Without Greece's cultural explosion during its golden age, the Renaissance, inspired centuries later by Greek art and thought, might never have occurred. The intellectual lineage that shaped the modern world could have been severed, leaving human development on a vastly different trajectory. In this alternate timeline, the echoes of Thermopylae would carry a far different tune, one where the light of Greek brilliance flickered under the expansive shadow of Persian domination. Yet, history remembers Thermopylae as a bittersweet triumph of spirit, resilience, and unity in the face of overwhelming odds. It remains an enduring testament to the strength of cultural identity and the transformative power of defiance. With this pivotal battle considered, we now turn to an entirely different conflict, one that pitted Greek against Greek in a struggle that would shape the destiny of an entire civilization. Now turning to the Peloponnesian War, a brutal and protracted conflict between Athens and Sparta that unfolded over nearly 3 decades, we encounter a tale of fractured alliances and devastating consequences for the Greek world. Historically, Sparta emerged victorious, leading to the decline of Athenian power and influence. But what if Athens had triumphed instead? Could this have steered Greece toward greater unity and stability instead of the fragmentation that followed? An Athenian victory might have reshaped the geopolitical landscape of ancient Greece. Athens, with its strong naval power and democratic ideals, could have leveraged its influence to foster stronger alliances among the Greek city-states. Instead of the bitter rivalries that persisted for centuries, a unified Greece under Athenian leadership might have emerged, potentially forming a precursor to larger-scale cooperation akin to modern federations. This unity could have allowed Greece to not only rebuild from the war's devastation, but also to expand its influence outward, strengthening its foothold in the Mediterranean and potentially rivaling future empires. Such an outcome might have also catalyzed a second golden age for Athens. The war's end in their favor could have seen a revitalization of cultural, artistic, and intellectual pursuits. The city's democratic system, which inspired countless political systems throughout history, might have evolved and spread more robustly to other regions. Institutions like the Athenian Assembly could have served as models for governance far beyond the Aegean, potentially laying the groundwork for political systems that embraced collective decision-making on a much broader scale. The economic benefits of an Athenian victory could also have been profound. Athens' maritime dominance and trade networks would likely have flourished further, transforming the region into a hub of commerce and innovation. This economic prosperity might have provided the resources necessary to invest in advancements in science, philosophy, and the arts, elevating Greek civilization to unprecedented heights. Figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, already central to Western thought, might have been joined by even more intellectual giants, shaping a world where knowledge and discovery accelerated at an extraordinary pace. However, the consolidation of power by Athens could also have posed challenges. Their imperialistic ambitions, evident even before the war, might have intensified, leading to resistance from other city-states suspicious of centralized control. Maintaining unity in such a fiercely independent and diverse region would have required delicate balance, as the spirit of autonomy was deeply ingrained in Greek identity. Athenian hegemony, while potentially transformative, might have faced internal strife that could undermine its stability. Still, the broader implications of an Athenian victory resonate through history. A stronger, more unified Greece might have been better equipped to resist external threats, including the rise of Macedon and the eventual conquests of Alexander the Great. This alternate trajectory could have delayed or even altered the course of Alexander's campaigns, creating a world where Greek culture and governance expanded under different circumstances. Ultimately, the Peloponnesian War stands as a poignant reminder of the cost of division and the fragility of alliances. It highlights the immense potential that might have been unlocked through unity and cooperation. With this thought in mind, our journey now leads us to the ambitious conquests of Alexander the Great, a figure whose victories and vision forever altered the course of history. Now turning to the ambitious campaigns of Alexander the Great, it is almost impossible to overstate the transformative impact of his victories on the ancient world. His conquests, stretching from Greece to Egypt and deep into Persia, forged one of the largest empires in history and set the stage for an extraordinary cultural fusion between East and West. But what if Alexander had faced defeat in a pivotal battle such as at Gaugamela, where he decisively overcame the Persian King Darius? How might the ancient world have evolved without his meteoric rise? A defeat for Alexander could have drastically shifted the balance of power in the ancient world. The Persian Empire, though beleaguered, might have regained its footing and continued its dominance across vast territories. In such a scenario, the rich traditions of Persia could have remained the central influence in the region, potentially stalling the spread of Hellenistic culture and keeping Greek ideas and governance confined to the Mediterranean basin. This could have delayed or completely altered the development of philosophies, sciences, and political systems that Alexander's empire helped disseminate. Furthermore, without Alexander's unifying force, the Greek city-states might have reverted to their fractious and competitive nature. Rather than coming together under a shared Hellenistic identity, they could have splintered further, weakening their ability to project influence beyond their immediate borders. The absence of a powerful Greek-led empire might have allowed other regional powers, such as Carthage or even a resurgent Egypt under the descendants of the pharaohs, to fill the vacuum left by Alexander's defeat. Additionally, the absence of Alexander's legacy may have opened the door for smaller, less centralized empires to flourish. Forces such as the Scythians or Parthians might have expanded their territories, creating a patchwork of competing powers rather than a single dominant force. This fragmentation could have led to a more regionalized ancient world, where trade, culture, and even warfare developed along entirely different lines. The cultural implications of Alexander's failure would have been profound. The blending of Greek and Eastern traditions, which influenced architecture, art, language, and governance from the Mediterranean to Central Asia, might never have occurred on such a grand scale. Cities like Alexandria in Egypt, which became hubs of learning and innovation, might have remained modest settlements rather than flourishing centers of knowledge. The exchange of ideas that defined the Hellenistic world could have been stifled, leading to a slower evolution of technology and cultural advancements. On a personal level, Alexander's incredible charisma and determination inspired countless leaders throughout history. Without his example, the archetype of the military genius and visionary ruler might have been replaced by more localized, pragmatic leadership models. The ambitions of future empires, including those of Rome, might have taken different forms, with less focus on rapid, expansive conquests and more emphasis on regional consolidation. However, the failure of Alexander might also have prompted Greece to rethink its priorities. Without a vast empire to sustain, Greek society could have poured its energies into refining its cultural and intellectual achievements on a more localized scale. This concentrated focus might have resulted in a deeper, though less widespread, legacy of Greek thought, potentially influencing the Mediterranean in ways that are difficult to predict. Ultimately, Alexander's story, whether of triumph or potential defeat, serves as a testament to the unpredictable nature of history. His unrelenting drive to conquer and unite left an indelible mark on the ancient world, but a single misstep could have altered everything. With this in mind, we now turn our attention to another pivotal conflict, the First Punic War, where Rome and Carthage began their centuries-long rivalry for control of the Mediterranean. As the next challenge unfolds, we turn to the extraordinary military genius of Hannibal and his audacious campaign against Rome during the Second Punic War. Hannibal's bold strategies, including the legendary crossing of the Alps with war elephants, brought Rome to the brink of collapse. Yet, despite his stunning victories on Italian soil, he ultimately failed to deliver the decisive blow that could have toppled the burgeoning Roman Republic. But what if Hannibal had succeeded in turning his relentless assaults into a complete and undeniable victory over Rome? Such a turn of events would have fundamentally reshaped the power dynamics of the ancient Mediterranean. With Rome defeated, Carthage likely would have ascended as the dominant force in the region. Unlike Rome's centralized approach to governance and military expansion, Carthage, being a maritime trading power, might have focused on building a vast commercial empire rather than seeking territorial control through conquest. This could have fostered a Mediterranean world characterized by expansive trade networks rather than sustained military domination, potentially leading to an earlier flourishing of global commerce. A victorious Hannibal might have also curtailed Rome's imperial ambitions before they could fully form. Without Roman influence, the spread of Latin culture, political ideals, and legal systems across Europe could have been slowed or even halted altogether. In their place, the traditions and innovations of Carthage, heavily influenced by their Phoenician heritage, may have taken root, bringing a strong emphasis on trade, naval prowess, and cultural exchange rather than conquest and assimilation. Politically, the complete downfall of Rome would have left a power vacuum in the Italian peninsula. Carthage, already stretched thin from its wars with Rome, might have chosen not to fully occupy the region, allowing smaller states or local powers, such as the Etruscans or Samnites, to re-emerge and shape their own destinies. This absence of a dominant force could have resulted in a fragmented Italy, with competing city-states and alliances dominating the landscape instead of a unified Roman state. Culturally, the defeat of Rome would have halted the proliferation of Roman engineering, literature, and institutions that later defined much of Western civilization. Instead, Carthaginian ideas, art, and architecture might have taken center stage, influencing the development of societies across Europe and North Africa in ways that are now difficult to imagine. The Latin language, a cornerstone of European history, could have been replaced by Carthaginian or other regional languages as the lingua franca of the Mediterranean. Religiously, the Punic traditions of Carthage, which included reverence for gods such as Baal and Tanit, might have played a much more significant role in shaping the spiritual landscape of the ancient world. This could have created an alternate trajectory for the evolution of religious practices and beliefs, potentially altering the eventual rise and integration of monotheistic religions in the region. Hannibal's victory might also have changed the course of military history. His tactics, which inspired countless generals even in defeat, would have gained even greater prominence and perhaps shifted the focus of warfare to emphasize mobility, surprise, and cunning over sheer numbers and brute force. Future conflicts might have borne the mark of Hannibal's genius, with generals seeking to emulate his creative strategies on a broader stage. Yet, a Carthaginian-dominated Mediterranean was no guarantee of long-term stability. Carthage's reliance on a vast network of mercenaries to fuel its military efforts, coupled with its decentralized and profit-driven structure, may have made it vulnerable to internal strife and external pressures. Over time, other emerging powers, whether in Greece, Gaul, or even a resurgent Egypt, might have found opportunities to challenge Carthage's supremacy. Ultimately, Hannibal's near success against Rome provides a tantalizing glimpse into the fragility of historical outcomes. His campaign demonstrates how a single individual's strategic brilliance can shape centuries of history or leave us wondering what might have been. With Hannibal's campaign in mind, let us now set our sights on the Battle of Zama, the defining clash that sealed Rome's fate and forever altered the future of the Mediterranean world. As the next chapter unfolds, we now turn our attention to the pivotal naval confrontation at the Battle of Actium, where the forces of Octavian clashed with those of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. This decisive encounter marked the end of the Roman Republic and heralded the rise of the Roman Empire under Augustus. But what if Antony and Cleopatra had emerged victorious, carving a different path through the annals of history? Had Antony and Cleopatra triumphed, their victory could have redefined the power structure of the ancient world. Instead of a Rome centralized under Octavian's sole authority, a divided empire might have emerged, with Antony and Cleopatra governing from Alexandria, blending Roman administrative efficiency with Egyptian wealth and culture. This fusion could have created a Mediterranean powerhouse rooted in both Roman and Hellenistic traditions, with Alexandria potentially surpassing Rome as the epicenter of politics, trade, and intellectual activity. Culturally, the ascendancy of Antony and Cleopatra may have resulted in the amplification of Egyptian influences across the Roman world. Egyptian art, religious practices, and architectural styles might have permeated Roman society, creating a hybrid culture that valued the mysticism of the Nile alongside the pragmatism of Rome. Cleopatra, with her command of multiple languages and deep understanding of diplomacy, could have championed a new cultural renaissance, fostering the exchange of knowledge between East and West and preserving the legacy of ancient Egypt on an unprecedented scale. Politically, their rule could have maintained a dual power structure, with Rome and Alexandria serving as twin capitals of their empire. However, this arrangement might have also sown seeds of instability. The differing cultural, political, and economic priorities of the Roman and Egyptian halves could have led to tensions, perhaps even periodic conflicts, between Western and Eastern factions of the empire. This division might have delayed or even prevented the eventual consolidation of power that enabled the Roman Empire's long-lasting influence. Religiously, their success might have elevated Egyptian deities such as Isis and Osiris to a more prominent status within the broader Greco-Roman world. Cleopatra herself was associated with the goddess Isis, and a victory at Actium could have solidified this connection, potentially leading to a spiritual framework that merged Roman and Egyptian religious traditions. This blending of beliefs might have created a unique spiritual landscape, influencing the development of religious practices for centuries to come. Economically, an empire led by Antony and Cleopatra would have likely leaned heavily into Alexandria's status as a wealthy trading hub, leveraging its strategic position between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. This could have expanded trade networks deeper into Africa and Asia, fostering economic growth and cultural exchange that might have accelerated global connectivity far earlier than in our timeline. Militarily, Antony's reliance on Cleopatra's resources suggests that their victory could have propelled Egypt to the forefront of Roman military campaigns. With Cleopatra's backing, new strategies and technologies might have emerged, reshaping the Roman approach to warfare and fortifications while placing Egypt as an equal partner in imperial ambitions. However, their victory was far from a guarantee of peace or stability. The competing ambitions of Antony and Cleopatra with other Roman factions, as well as their reliance on a coalition of forces, could have left them vulnerable to future uprisings and power struggles. Furthermore, Cleopatra's image within Rome, often painted negatively due to propaganda, might have continued to fuel discontent and resistance among Roman elites, challenging the longevity of their rule. The implications of a victory at Actium would extend well beyond the military sphere, touching upon every aspect of life in the ancient world. It invites us to consider how a dual Roman-Egyptian leadership could have altered the trajectory of governance, culture, and religion across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. With the possibilities of Actium's alternate outcome in mind, we now shift our focus to another significant turning point in ancient history: the Jewish-Roman Wars and their enduring impact on the region and beyond. Now turning to the dense, mysterious forests of Germania, we delve into the aftermath of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, a catastrophic defeat for Rome at the hands of united Germanic tribes. But what if this pivotal clash had ended in a Roman victory? How might the course of European history have changed if Rome had established firm control over Germania? A Roman victory would have likely paved the way for the integration of Germania into the Roman Empire as a fully Romanized province. This could have accelerated the spread of Roman infrastructure, including roads, aqueducts, and fortified cities across the Germanic territories. Such developments would not only have connected Germania with the broader Roman trade networks, but also introduced Roman legal systems, governance, and culture to the region, transforming it into a key component of the empire. Over time, the blending of Roman and Germanic cultures might have produced a unique regional identity, potentially influencing the development of modern European nations. Linguistically, the Romanization of Germania could have significantly altered the evolution of European languages. The Latin language, which served as the backbone of Roman administration and culture, may have taken root in Germanic lands, gradually merging with local dialects to create entirely new linguistic branches. The dominance of Latin might have reshaped the linguistic map of Europe, potentially diminishing the influence of Germanic languages that eventually gave rise to modern languages like German, English, and Dutch. Instead, these regions may have developed Romance languages more closely related to Italian, French, or Spanish, creating a dramatically different linguistic landscape in Europe. Economically, the integration of Germania into the Roman Empire could have opened new trade routes deep into Europe, connecting the Mediterranean with the resources of the northern forests, rivers, and fertile lands. Timber, furs, and other goods from Germania might have flowed more freely into Roman markets, while Roman goods and technologies would have traveled northward, enriching the local economy. This enhanced connectivity might have stimulated economic development and urbanization in Germania far earlier than in our historical timeline, with Romanized cities emerging as centers of trade and culture in the region. Politically, Roman control over Germania might have created a more unified Europe under the Roman banner. The Rhine and Danube rivers, rather than serving as borders, might have become internal arteries of the empire, facilitating unity and cohesion across the continent. This expanded empire may have been better positioned to withstand external pressures, including invasions from the Huns and other migrating peoples, potentially delaying the decline of the Western Roman Empire. Moreover, a Roman victory at Teutoburg could have shifted the empire's focus further eastward, with Germania serving as a springboard for campaigns into Eastern Europe. This expansion might have drawn a significant portion of Europe into the Roman cultural and political sphere, creating a more interconnected continent much earlier in history. The ripple effects could have shaped the development of European borders, leading to a more cohesive geopolitical structure that influenced global history. However, the conquest of Germania might not have been without challenges. The cultural differences and resistance among the fiercely independent Germanic tribes could have created friction, requiring Rome to invest heavily in maintaining control. Such efforts might have drained resources and attention from other parts of the empire, possibly accelerating challenges elsewhere. Yet, imagining a Romanized Germania raises profound questions about how the foundations of modern European identity, language, and culture might have evolved under Roman influence. With these possibilities in mind, we now turn our attention to the heart of the ancient Indian subcontinent and the transformative Kalinga War that marked a crucial pivot in the history of the Maurya Empire. As the sun rises on the next chapter, we journey to the windswept fields of Hastings in the year 1066, where the Battle of Hastings decided the fate of England. William the Conqueror's victory solidified Norman rule and forever altered the trajectory of English history. But what if Harold Godwinson had emerged victorious that day? How might England, and indeed the wider world, have evolved under a Saxon-dominated future? A victory for Harold Godwinson could have preserved the Anglo-Saxon traditions that were deeply rooted in English culture at the time. Without the Norman conquest, the influence of French language and customs on the Anglo-Saxon population might have been far less pronounced. The English language, in particular, would likely have followed a very different path, potentially remaining closer to its Germanic roots. Without the heavy infusion of Norman French vocabulary, the modern English we know today might have evolved into a language resembling Old English, maintaining a more Germanic structure and lexicon. This shift would have profoundly impacted literature, communication, and cultural exchanges in subsequent centuries. In terms of governance, Harold's victory might have meant the continuation of the Anglo-Saxon legal and feudal systems. The centralized administration and feudal hierarchy imposed by the Normans would likely not have taken hold, possibly resulting in a looser, more decentralized structure of governance in England. This could have made the development of strong centralized monarchies less likely, allowing local lords greater autonomy. Such a system might have affected England's ability to project power internationally, potentially delaying its rise as a major global force. The absence of Norman influence might also have altered England's colonial ambitions. Under Norman rule, England's connections to continental Europe shaped its trade, military strategies, and political alliances. Without this link, England's focus might have remained more insular, concentrating on regional affairs rather than expanding its reach across the seas. In this alternate timeline, the age of exploration and the eventual British Empire might have either taken a vastly different form or been significantly delayed, reshaping global history. Culturally, a victory for Harold could have influenced the architecture, art, and societal structures of England. The Norman conquest brought Romanesque architectural styles, which evolved into the iconic Gothic cathedrals and castles that still define much of England's historical landscape. Without Norman rule, Anglo-Saxon influences might have continued to shape England's aesthetic identity, resulting in a distinct architectural and cultural trajectory. However, Harold's triumph would not have guaranteed stability. The Norman claim to the English throne was unlikely to disappear simply due to a single battle. William and his supporters may have regrouped and launched subsequent campaigns, leading to prolonged conflict and uncertainty across England. Additionally, Harold's kingdom faced threats not only from the Normans but also from Scandinavian powers, leaving England vulnerable to further external pressures. The ripple effects of Harold Godwinson's victory could have reshaped Europe's balance of power. Without England fully integrated into Norman-led continental politics, alliances and rivalries across Europe might have shifted. This alternate political landscape could have influenced major historical events, from the Crusades to the 100 Years' War, creating a domino effect of changes across the medieval world. As we imagine these alternate possibilities, it is clear that the Battle of Hastings was more than just a clash of armies. It was a crossroads that defined the cultural, political, and linguistic identity of England for centuries to come. And as we reflect on this turning point, let us revisit the grand conclusion of our journey through history's great what-ifs, where tantalizing possibilities lie in every untaken path. As we reach the grand conclusion of our journey through these 20 monumental ancient wars, we are reminded how each battle served as a critical turning point in human history. These conflicts, ranging from the defiant stand at Marathon to the pivotal clash at Hastings, collectively shaped the cultural, political, and social landscapes of their eras. The alternate scenarios we explored reveal just how different our world could have been had the fates of these battles shifted even slightly. How might democracy have evolved without the Athenians' triumph over Persia? Could the Roman Empire have been halted in its tracks by Hannibal's brilliance or Spartacus' bold rebellion? What would the world look like if Byzantium had withstood the Arab conquests, or if Harold Godwinson had cemented Anglo-Saxon rule over England? These questions remind us of the fragile threads upon which history balances and the profound consequences of these pivotal moments on our shared human story. The wars and their alternate outcomes offer a fascinating lens through which to examine not only the events themselves but also the enduring legacies they left behind. They shaped empires, languages, religions, and cultures, crafting the world as we know it today. Reflecting on these crossroads teaches us the importance of understanding history, not just for what it was, but for what it could have been. The possibilities are endless, and the untaken paths offer an irresistible invitation to ponder how a single moment in time could ripple out to transform entire civilizations. And now, we invite you to become part of this conversation. What are your thoughts on these alternate scenarios? Which battles do you think would have had the most profound alternate outcomes, and why? Share your insights and join the discussion in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration of history's great what-ifs, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the past. Together, let us continue uncovering the mysteries of history and imagining the endless possibilities of what might have been. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure through time.